Hi flowers, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, then hello, and if you've been here before, then welcome back. So today's video is going to be something a little different. I did debate whether I wanted to do this or not, but then I thought that this video may help someone else, or there'll be some of you that are going through a similar situation or have been going through a similar situation. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So I actually have 3 illnesses, conditions, whatever you want to call them, that are either undiagnosed, confirmed, or still undergoing investigation. They're not something you think that I'd have just by looking at me, because they are not anything that is physical. But it's something that I have been suffering with for such a long time now. Like, I can't even remember the last time I actually felt semi-normal. So I'm going to start in the order in which I was diagnosed, or in the order that I actually found out. So the first thing that I found out was that I have a low kidney function. So I found this out back in about 2014, so it was about a year after I had summer. I started to suffer with back pain. Some days it would come and go, and other days I'd have it all the time. Sometimes it would get to the point where I couldn't really move too quickly, and then other days there'd be times where I physically could not move at all. I just put it down to the fact that obviously I had a baby about a year ago. You know, your body goes through changes and there's been strains on your body, and I did suffer with a bit of back pain whilst I was pregnant. But there did come a day where I was so bad, I was probably sat there crying. Paracetamol just wasn't easing the pain at all. And I decided to go to the doctors. They'd done all the checks that they needed to do, and everything else with me came up fine. So they decided to send me for some blood tests, and just in case, you know, there was something hidden there that they couldn't physically pick up through every other test that they had done. So I had my bloods done, and when I got them back, it came back that I had a low kidney function. So it wasn't low enough for them to be really concerned about it, but they just wanted to make sure that there was nothing sinister going on. So they just thought maybe I was having some sort of sluggish week or day. So a few days later they sent me for some more blood tests. They told me to avoid red meats because there's something in red meats that kind of affect your kidneys. So I went back and had my bloods done, and again they came back as that they were low. Nothing again too sinister. It wasn't really low that it was a massive cause for concern. They hadn't changed, they hadn't dropped, they hadn't gone up, they were still sat at the same. So we established that that was what was causing my back pain. The only thing really that they could do with that is obviously paracetamol, and it does seem to work. I still have my really off days where my back is really painful, but the majority of the time I can deal with it. So about every 6 months or so, I do go back and have some bloods done just to make sure that it hasn't got any worse, and if it's got better then that's great. But that's just something that I've had to live with since about 2014 when I found out. When someone says your kidneys, you just automatically think the worst, but in my case it wasn't bad, and they've basically just said to me that it's obviously what's normal for me, because obviously nothing has really changed over the last 5 years or so, so there was nothing really too worrying about that. But it is definitely something that I do battle with every day because of the back pain that I get. So that is number 1. I feel like I'm literally falling apart. So the second thing that I found out, this is still under investigation. This is still undiagnosed, and I think this is probably the worst one for me. So I suffer with some stomach issue. They are unable to confirm what it is. So this started back when I went abroad, actually, in about, I think it was about 2015, 2016. I was away on a family holiday, and the last few days I became poorly. I had really bad stomach cramps, TMI, so if you don't want to listen to this, but I was being sick and I had it coming out at the other end, to put it nicely, for the last sort of 3 days of my holiday. When I got back, that still continued. The sickness had died down, but the pains in my stomach and in my back were getting really, really bad. I kind of put the back pains obviously down to my kidneys and stuff, but my stomach was just horrendous. I left it and just thought maybe I picked up a bug whilst I was out there, because I know a lot of their drinks out there, they do automatically put the ice in. The majority of the time I do say no ice in my drinks out there, because I don't know whether they've bottled it or whether it's from the tap, and obviously with it being from the tap you don't necessarily want to drink it. So I just assumed that the back pain was my kidneys and that I'd picked up a bug, so I left it. But every time I'd go out, I couldn't physically go out because I was constantly in pain, needing the toilet, and I'd always worry that there wouldn't be a toilet around for me to use at the time. So I decided to go to the doctors, and they just basically confirmed what I was thinking. They basically said that you obviously picked up a bug, and they just told me to sort of see how I went. I decided not to go back because I did generally think it was just a bug that just wouldn't shift. But a few months had actually passed and I still had the pains. I still had a dodgy tummy. And I'd physically have the pain all the time. The pain actually got really, really bad to the point I was actually on the floor, curled up in a little ball. I couldn't move, I couldn't walk, I couldn't stand. So I ended up ringing the 111 service, which is obviously the out of hours, non-emergency doctors, and they basically told me to go in. They thought that initially it was my appendix, because I've never had my appendix out. So they ran some tests with that and they confirmed that it wasn't actually my appendix. Then this sort of went on for a good few years, and throughout the sort of 3 years or so, they've told me it could be anxiety. I do suffer with anxiety, but they put it down to that. They put it down to IBS. Obviously they did rule out my appendix, but they never really have confirmed what is actually going on, because they generally have no idea what is happening. I had bloods done, bloods came back, obviously apart from my kidney function, which has always stayed the same since. I've had ultrasound scans. I had a, what's the big one that you go in? Sort of like a CT scan. I think there is another name for it. Or if that's what you call it, I don't really know. And everything has came back as normal. I still to this day suffer with the pain. Some days are bearable and I barely know that it's there because I've just got so used to having that pain there. And other days I have my really bad days and I will just be curled up in a ball and not really knowing what to do. But it's just hard because obviously I've learnt to deal with it. I've definitely learnt to deal with it. But it does, when I do have my bad days, I feel like I can't go out, and I definitely know that anxiety has a little bit to do with it, because in my head I start to overthink things, and like if I go out, I've got to know where I'm going, if there's like toilets close by, all that kind of stuff. So I've kind of learnt to deal with that one, and I still to this day deal with it. Like now I have a bit of pain, but it's not so bad that I notice it then, if that makes sense. But yeah, that's still kind of undergoing investigation. So when I do have a bad episode obviously they will run their checks again, but as per normal, they don't really pick anything up. I think with this situation, they have, at the hospital, the doctors, they have all been absolutely amazing trying to get to a conclusion, basically, just to put my mind at rest and to put theirs at rest, to know that there is something causing this, but right now they are unsure of what the issue is, basically. So yeah, it is a bit of a tricky one, but I've sort of learned to deal with it. So finally and lastly, onto the last thing that I only found out that I had early last year, and I don't know how, and I don't know why they never picked it up before. This doesn't affect me as much, but when it happens, I know it's happening. So when this first happened, I literally thought I was dying, and I know that sounds so dramatic, but that is generally what I thought was happening. So I have an irregular heartbeat, and for the last 23 years, I never knew that I had it. Never. They've never picked it up. I don't know whether it's something that's just come on recently in the last year, or whether I've had it my whole life, but if I did, then they would surely have picked it up. So it's a bit of a strange one. So early last year, I started to get really bad chest pain, and it spread into my left side, in my back, in my shoulder, down my arm, and obviously across my chest, and more aimed at my left hand side. So again, me being the very calm person that I am, I didn't ring for an ambulance. Again, I rang the 111. They have literally been my absolute saviours over the last couple of years, because I feel like I've just had so much wrong, and I'm not one to ring the doctors, or obviously the non-emergency doctors, unless I feel like there's something really, really wrong with me, because I just don't want to waste their time if it's nothing. And I know a lot of people say it's better to be safe than sorry, but for me, I just generally wait until things get really bad for me, which I probably shouldn't think like that. So anyway, I rang them, and they basically said, well, they basically implied that maybe I could be having a heart attack. So when they did say that, obviously they said they'd send an ambulance. The ambulance were with me within 5 minutes. They were so quick, and I'm so grateful. But when you hear those words, it was frightening to me, because at the time I was only 22. I have a child, and the worst automatically goes through your head. You just automatically think, am I gonna die? What's gonna happen if I do? I never used to be this bad. Like, when things used to happen to me before I had summer, I just thought, ugh, it is what it is. But ever since having summer, and there is something wrong with me, or I do fall ill, I automatically panic, because I always think, what's going to happen to her? I know that sounds awful, and I know I shouldn't think like that, but that is just how I generally think. But I know I shouldn't. Anyway, the paramedics came to me, and they put I think it's called an ECG. They put all the ECG pads on me, and obviously monitored my heart rate. Bearing in mind, I had been sat down for the past half an hour, 45 minutes, and my heart rate was beating so fast. They couldn't understand why, because I hadn't got up too quickly. I hadn't been to the toilet. I generally had not moved. So to be safe, they sent me over to the hospital. They gave me aspirin, just to obviously thin the blood, and they gave me a little spray that goes under the tongue, which is what they'd give people that were having a heart attack, just to sort of open up all the arteries. And again, my heart rate was sky high. And when I got to the hospital again, they hooked me up to the ECG and monitored me for I think I was in the hospital for about 3 hours or so. My mum actually came with me. My mum is the only person that I really want in the hospital with me, because everyone wants their mum when they're ill or there's something going on. And my mum, through practically every time that I've been in hospital has been there with me, so thanks mum for putting up with my dramatic arse. But my mum was with me. But I was in the hospital for around about 3 hours or so, which I don't think is actually too bad. They just kept monitoring me and obviously checking what my heart rate was doing. It did eventually come down, but it went lower than normal. What do they call it? Resting heart rate. Then it went back up to normal. They basically said to me that I had an irregular heartbeat, and that again is just normal for me. They said that when obviously your heart rate is higher than what it should be, you will start having palpitations, which I do get, and when I get those, the pain does come. Again, this is just something that I deal with basically on a daily basis. But they basically said to me that there's not really anything they can do, because you've got to have so many episodes within the space of a year, and I think I've only ever had 3 episodes over the last 2 years, so it's not something that's really a cause for concern. So unless I had like, I think it's like 6, so that's basically like 1 a month in like 6 months, then they'd probably consider medication or something like that, but it's not a massive concern. I think the hardest part for me with having these conditions, symptoms, illnesses, whatever you want to call them, is the ones that actually haven't been diagnosed. I think that's probably the hardest part, because that's probably the biggest one that I am actually suffering with every single day, and I have done for the last like 4 years, I guess. It feels so much longer than that, from when I found out. But I do not let it faze me. I get on with my life every day. You kind of got to live each day as it comes. And I am grateful for all the staff at the hospitals, the doctors that have probably seen me more than once on one occasion and have tried to help and have helped. So I am so grateful for that. But yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. It definitely wasn't an easy one, because to look at me you wouldn't think there was anything wrong. Every day people suffer with illnesses, conditions that actually you physically cannot see. But I thought I'd share it just in case any others have gone through the same. So I think with my experiences and the things that I go through and have been through, I definitely say, if something doesn't feel right, if you don't feel right in yourself, then go and get yourself checked out. It's definitely better to be safe than sorry. Even if it does turn out just to be nothing, definitely always get yourself checked. I do hope you found this video somewhat helpful, informative in some way. Leave a comment down below whether you are going through or have been through a similar situation. I'd love to hear your stories. If you did find this somewhat useful and helpful, then don't forget to smash a big thumbs up and click the subscribe button down below. Sorry it was a bit of a boring one and a bit of a long one, but that is it from me, and I will see you guys in my next video very, very soon. Bye.